for truth. Questioning is not a sin. There's a lot of love to pull you through. Sow the seed of faith within. If you have a question, just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and the teacher will call on you. And if you have a question, just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and the teacher will call on you. The teacher will call on you. That's right. The teacher will call on you.
That was for the professors in the room.
How's everybody doing? Yeah.
Full?
Well, full now. I mean,
A little sleepy after
know.
all the cupcakes.
all the cupcakes. Not anymore. There aren't.
There were mini ones, so, you know, it doesn't really count as a whole cupcake if you have one. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk. Let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toil and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who with me my burden shares? None but thee, dear Lord, none but thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Hey, all right. Thank you. Yeah, do another. All right. It sounds like we need faster music. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. All right. That's a good. Yeah, let's do that. You're gonna know this one, all right? Want to hear you sing along. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. There it is. I see one little light that came out. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Jesus gave it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave it to me. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. All right, now, this little light of mine. Here we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. All right, okay. All right. Let's see here. I tell you what, since you're here early, you came for the rehearsal. Should we do our Alleluia aim
I think
for
so.
worship tomorrow? We're going
I
to
think
teach
so,
you
yeah.
the Alleluia gospel acclamation we're going to use in worship tomorrow. Amy and I wrote this in New Orleans for our New Orleans Lutheran liturgy, and you sang it yesterday at the Beer and Hymn Sing over at Remedy. And if you didn't sing it there, you're going to sing it now. We're going to sing it tomorrow too.
So I'll sing a line and then I'll ask you to repeat that line. It goes like this. Alleluia.
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 good singers. Let's try that whole thing together. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. All right, dear Lutherans, this is where the challenge comes in. I know y'all can sing, but you know, sometimes here as a Lutheran, it's hard to sing and clap at the same time. So I'm going to invite you to do that. If you can do both at the same time, great. If you can't, you get to pick one. All right, the clapping goes like this. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Lord, oh Lord, to whom shall we go? Alleluia, alleluia. Mountains too high, this valley's too low. Alleluia, alleluia. Pilot our days in joy and in strife. Alleluia, alleluia. You have the words of eternal life. Alleluia, 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 alleluia.
Oh, you sound good.
Well done. For those of you who are able to do both, you get the official Tango Blue Gold Star.
Nice.
Yes, right?
One more? Yeah, great. Good. Well, let's see here. What kind of song do we want to do here, Aim? I think we could stand to do another hymn tune, right? That we could sing along with. How about let's do a little Soon and Very Soon. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King. No more crying there, we are going to see the King. No more crying there, we are going to see the King. No more crying there, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King. No more dying there, we are going to see the King. No more dying there, we are going to see the King. No more dying there, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Soon and very soon, we are going to see the King. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we're going to see the King. Hallelujah. Hi, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we give Tangle Blue a round of applause, please? Well, as we begin our festivities and our honoring of call and service, let me take a moment of personal privilege, because some of them need to go to bed soon, as do we all, but some sooner than others. So if my family would like to come up. We're missing two children. Oh, we're missing a son-in-law. Well, who cares, you know? Well, it's low-hanging fruit. So this is my bride. We've been married for 42 years. And if I keep teasing her, maybe we'll make it to 43. Who knows?
You'll be lucky.
Yeah, if I'm lucky. What'd you hear? Something?
Did you find Cooper?
We're
Announce for Cooper.
Cooper Aguilar. Please present yourself to the Celebrate Center.
Cooper,
Where?
he's working. Look at him.
Get up here. He's in the sound booth right now. Wow. So to my immediate left, this is our youngest daughter, Sarah, married to Alan, my favorite Johnson son-in-law. That's true. And so this is Cooper, 8. Isabel, who's about to turn 5. When are you turning 5? On June 11th. And the newest addition in the Johnson family, Elin, who is 7 months. 9 months. Well, I was traveling some of those months, and they don't really count then if I'm not around.
It's less than a year.
I know. So then this is our youngest, son and child, Michael, and our favorite Michael in the family, and his wife, Jenna. And they're expecting their first child in September, which will be number 11. We're at a football team. Yes, we are. All right, and then on my far left is our son, Josh, who's holding their brand new baby. Well, not quite brand new, but, and her name is 80, and he's married to Emily. And Leo, are you having fun? Yeah. That's Leo. That's their oldest. Are you the big sister?
2. Yeah,
She's
she's 2.
2. So our oldest daughter, Christina, and her husband and their 4 children are not here for this assembly. They're actually at Bible camp, so it's not like you can yell at them, you know. That counts as a pretty good excuse in the Zelmer family. So, but these are the people that I love dearly, and great to have you here tonight. Appreciate it.
See, Michael is like the only Michael in this family.
All right. All right. Our first call story is coming from Nisodak. If Lexi would please come forward. We'd like to have her up here in front. You're going to need to work from the pulpit, if that's all right. She's currently working at Nisodak as, program director, and she's also a Kairos student at Lutheran House of Studies and Sioux Falls Seminary. So great to have you here, Lexi.
Thanks. Yes, it's a pleasure to be with you guys all this evening and to be able to tell you just a little bit about my call story. There's been many different aspects that have kind of led me to seminary, and I'm going to speak to 2 pivotal ones. For me, that's outdoor ministry and young adults in global mission, also known as YAGM. So the picture that was up there just a minute ago, if that sunset there doesn't convince you to go into ministry, I don't know what will. But yeah, so that's a sunset right there on the shores of Lake Enemy Swim with Nisodak. That's me preaching a couple summers ago there. So I have had the pleasure of working at Nisodak for 3 summers when I was a college student, and now I've been there almost a year in a year-round capacity. So it's a pleasure to be serving Lutherans Outdoors in South Dakota and to be able to work with that staff and those campers that come as well all summer long. My journey working with camp, that's kind of the brief story there starting. I was a student here at Augustana University when I was discerning kind of which route I wanted to go. I was studying government and international affairs while having this passion of outdoor ministry and camp. So while I was discerning if I wanted to do seminary or law school, I guess I did what any rational person would do, and I actually went and moved to Australia. Yeah, so instead of taking either law school or seminary at that point, I applied for Young Adults in Global Mission. It's a program for young adults within the ELCA. Crops a little bit. But so ELCA, Young Adults in Global Mission, what it is it's a program for young adults that are aged 21 to 29 years old to be able to go out and do a year of service in a particular country, 12 different countries to be exact. I was blessed to be one of the first people to serve in Australia, so really figuring out what that program was going to look like. And happens chance, guess where they put me? They put me at a camp. So I got to go and serve in another camp capacity over there. The kids that were on this slide here, going back, these are a couple of kids that I had the pleasure of working with while I was there. They were our director's kids. This was me taking them down the zip line. I worked a lot with high adventure things, working with kids about their faith while they were doing high adventure activities. So what better way to talk about God than when you're up on a high ropes course or on a zip line and about to jump off? So it was a pleasure to be able to serve in that capacity. What Young Adults in Global Mission is all about is it follows the ELCA's model of accompaniment. So this idea that the reason that we do service is so that we can go out and we can walk alongside each other along this journey of faith and meet each other where we are at and have those conversations about where is God at work in the world, wherever we are at. So the Lutheran Church of Australia looks quite a bit different than the ELCA here, but yet we are able to walk alongside each other and talk about the way that our faith relates to what we are called to be serving. So it was an incredible program, and it was while I was over there that I was discerning again, what am I going to do when I come back to the United States? And while I was there, I started going through the candidacy process and began the Kairos process and was called to serve as the program director then at NISODAC while being a Kairos student. So now I've completed my first year there, and it's been an honor to be able to serve your guys' camps and to be a seminary student for the ELCA here in South Dakota. I'm very excited to be able to talk about camp. It's truly a passion of mine. The impact that outdoor ministry can have on a person is impeccable. Out of curiosity, who here feels like they were called to serve in whatever capacity you were with the church because you were either a camper or you were a camp counselor or anything like that? We see that firsthand right here in South Dakota as well, and we see the same thing in Australia when I was there, to see the people that were empowered to go to seminary because they went to camp and they felt loved and they had those encounters with God in a beautiful place, like those sunsets at NISODAC. Camp is an amazing place, and I know the impact that it has on campers and on staff, and if it wasn't for camp, I wouldn't be standing right here before you now. So I truly invite all of you to be able to experience camp and to send your kids to camp or the kids you know to camp, because it really does change lives. And if you want to continue to empower and grow the church, send your kids to camp and let them encounter that themselves. Looking at that picture here, let's see if I'm tech savvy. This one right here I took 2 days ago. So this is the sunset at NISODAC 2 days ago. This is your 2018 summer staff at NISODAC leading in a rocking worship service, and they are ready for you this summer. These are the people that we are calling to serve in our churches, that are going to be there to serve for your kids. This is the future of your church. This is where I was called, and this is where many of these people standing around this fire are going to be called. So thank you so much for all that you do to help camp, and thank you for all that you do for our church, and thanks to all of you. It's the reason that I am here before you, and to be able to share just a piece of my call story. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second call story is going to come from Pastor Jeff Willock. He is currently serving as the senior pastor at Bethlehem Lutheran in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He's also one of our Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, South Dakota. It's one of those big towns. Starts with an A. Good to have you here.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. As Bishop Zelmer said, I'm Jeff Willock. I'm the child of a mixed marriage. I was born in Eagle Butte, and my dad is Wisconsin Catholic, and my mom is a Minnesota Methodist. I lived in Eagle Butte for just a very short time and ended up growing up mainly in Rapid City, and some people might say growing up mainly, does that mean he's mainly grown up, or mainly that's where he lived? And I'll leave that to you. But grew up on the edge of the Catholic Church there, and I say the edge because we were too busy hunting and fishing and camping and skiing to go to church regularly. Growing up there at Blessed Sacrament, we went to church mostly Saturday nights, and it was folk mass, and that was okay because the Zocker sisters were part of the band, and they were cute. So it's the reality. I remember being probably in junior high and thinking, maybe God wants me to be a priest, but I really want to teach my kids to ride their bike. And I knew enough then that those two things didn't go together very well. At one point when I was in high school, I stayed over at a friend's house, and it was a Saturday night in October. And the next morning, he and his mom got up and were going to go to church, and so my brother and I went along, and so I went into this strange church. There were kids in robes, and there were red things, and there was no priests. There were 3 pastors, and one of them was a woman named Julie. First time I think I ever was in a Lutheran church. Confirmation Day, Reformation Day at Calvary in Rapid City. Well, that church, Calvary, kind of adopted me, and they saw us and our family through some incredibly challenging times, and were there for us in amazing ways. By the time that I was a junior in high school, so about 6 months after that October, it was Easter, and so we went back to my dad's hometown, and my dad and my brother and I, we skipped going to Mass on Easter Sunday, and we went to the nursing home to see my grandpa, my dad's dad. And when we got back to Rapid, a few days later, we got the phone call that he had died. He had scooted up to his bedside table and had a jelly bean in his mouth when he died. And about a month after that, my parents' marriage fell apart the last time, and my dad moved out. And about 6 weeks after that, my brother left for Up With People. So in the period of about 3 months, 3 generations of Willock men were out of my life. About 6 months after that, my mom went into treatment, and it was not such a good time. I remember taking my Bible and my rosary that I got from confirmation when I was confirmed at Blessed Sacrament and putting it in a cardboard box and hauling it into the crawl space and closing the door on my faith and on God, and yet God never gave up on me. And somehow I got drawn back time and time again to Calvary, and the 3 pastors there, and especially Pastor Julie, just kind of spoke to my heart. And a lot of other pieces in there. Ended up going to Augustana and finding out that I loved being a Lutheran. I ended up working at Outlaw and worked with Scott Hackler as my boss, and he introduced me to this thing called a hymnal. I didn't know what a hymnal was. Learned to sing songs like Spirit of Gentleness with him playing his guitar on the campfire. I ended up going to Augie, and it was a religion major, and never wanted to go to seminary because I knew I was a jerk. I knew that nobody would tolerate me as a pastor because I was a schmuck, and I had all kinds of faults. So I thought maybe I would go to seminary and be a professor. I loved my experience at Augie. And so I ended up being introduced to this amazing woman when I was at Augie. And after I graduated, I ran from seminary for a year, and I did all kinds of things, from working at the nursing home to cabinet factory to sealing asphalt parking lots, and finally went to seminary and didn't tell anybody I didn't want to be a pastor, that I just wanted to be a professor. And back then, the rule was you had to go to the parish for 3 years. So I thought, I'll go to the parish for 3 years of necessary evil. After I finished my first year of seminary, I came back here to Augustana, and 28 years ago today, I had wedding rehearsal at the chapel over there. And Nancy's put up with me since then. Thank you. I finished seminary. I finished seminary planning to go to the parish for 3 years, and first call was 3.5 years, and then God tricked me and called me to Iowa. For a South Dakotan to move to Iowa, that was and then I got called to Aberdeen and was there for 3.5 years before I got called to change roles there, and have been now 10 years in that role, and God keeps tricking me, and I still don't know that I want to be a pastor. But God won't let go of me. So God won't let go of you either.
If we could have our 25 anniversary folks up here, spouses included. Come on, Nancy. John Paulson, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think we're supposed to get a photo somewhere. Sawyer, come this way. Let's start with John, since I'm holding his plaque. All right, there, let's do that, and we'll do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Serves in Wessington Springs, and has done some writing for the church and some teaching, and appreciate very much your ministry here in the South Dakota Synod. It's great to have you here. And if you know, I sometimes stay in their basement. Or as one of my godchildren has said, that's the man that lives in our basement. So it's not quite that bad, but it's close, and I very much appreciate the work that you've done in Aberdeen. And Nancy, it's just been a delight to get to know you. And we've got, now if you go to Cameroon with me, you can pretty much buy the church over there if you
give these away?
Yes. They're really popular.
Very good.
All right. Thanks very much. Can you greet? And all right. Let's do the retirements first, since we're doing that right now. If our folks that are retiring, and unfortunately this is the largest group, and many of them are leaving the state, which is another clearing of the throat. Because I will tell you seriously now that it's a difficult phone call when 6 months after they've retired, and I get a phone call from another bishop and say, tell me about this pastor that moved to our synod. They're terrible. You should not work them at all. You should send them back to South Dakota. So all of our retirees and their spouses, please come forward.
I thought you looked good up here, Galen. Why?
You thought he was going to take the whole thing? Is Marcia not here at all? Or
She's a wedding.
She has a wedding. Okay. I like it. when I look at all the ministry that's lined up here, it's just been an amazing gift to the church to speak for the whole group. Several of these people either started right before me, which, I mean, I'm amazed at how much older you look than I do, Bruce. That's not true. And then I have a classmate up here. Pastor Tim and I went to seminary at the same time, graduated in the class of 81. And yes, so I want to say thanks on behalf of the whole church for all of you as we start down this row of folks here. Since I teased you, Bruce, I better hand deliver yours. Okay. Congratulations. And I appreciate you staying. Yeah. And John, and you came back.
Yeah.
That's great. Congratulations. And you guys are staying, but you're going to be gone for a year?
No. I'm just going to be gone for weeks here and there, taking care of my dad.
Oh.
And I'm going to be in Aberdeen.
And where are you guys moving to?
St. Cloud.
St. Cloud. Very good. I'll go down to the rest of the crew. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your years of service. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No sacrifice on your part, right?
Well,
It's easy. It's easy being a spouse of a pastor. And congratulations to you and to Bob.
Thank you, David.
You bet. Congratulations. And thanks for your years of service.
Thanks.
So did we get all the plaques turned out? How about if we just take a group photo? Is that okay? Yeah. All right. You have to do what? Well, how about if spouses step forward a little bit and pastor slide over? How's that? That help? No. Yes, sir. Thank you, and thank all of you. And if we could hear our third call story, Karin Lindell, Church and Community Volunteer.
My name is Karin Lindell, and I'm from Sioux Falls, and I'm a member of St. Mark's Lutheran Church here. Growing up, our family was always church going. It was just an integrated part of our life. It was just, a given. And when I was in 10th grade in high school, we had to write autobiographies about our lives. And I was thinking of what to put in there. And I asked my mom if she had ideas. And she said, well, say that church is a central part of your life. And I thought, oh, that's right. I didn't, I never quite thought of it that way. It was just always part of it. And I did like church. And that was a revelation to me. Then after high school, I went to Augustana, and I had no idea that religion would be one of my majors. But I loved the courses, and I learned things in those courses that I would never have learned anywhere else. And finally, I had taken enough religion classes that I had a major in that too. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but people kept saying, well, you're going to go to graduate school and, go to Luther Seminary in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. So I thought, yeah, okay. And I went to Luther and to get a Master of Arts in Church History. And there was a matriculation interview, as they called it, after the first year. And professors, there were two professors, my advisor and another professor, and talking to me about what I was thinking of doing, how I would use this. And I said, I'm not sure. I just know how much I enjoy what I'm studying. and being here, and they said, "You love the church," and I thought, yeah, and that was another revelation. That was true. I graduated, and then I worked at Augustana here again in Sioux Falls as worked with a faculty development grant, and I love the church colleges, and I enjoyed it very much. Then I had a deterioration of my vision, and which had been poor all to start with, and a significant deterioration. And at the same time, the grant ran out of renewal cycles. So after that, I couldn't really do a regular job with the headaches I get from eye strain and the vision loss. So I began to volunteer. And my mom always said that growing up, she and her sisters, their dad always, on the farm, their dad told them, you always help a neighbor and you never take payment for it. And my mom was just a natural example of a volunteer in church and community. And so I think as I volunteer, that's my way of loving my neighbor. And I'm at St. Mark's, where I grew up, and as a ministry coordinator there. And I also volunteer at the Synod office, because remember, I love the church. And I do enjoy that very much, a couple of days a week. And also with a woman through the Lifescape program who wanted help practicing reading. So every week we meet and we read. And that's just a wonderful relationship. I respect her so much, and we enjoy each other, and we have been doing that for years. So all of these things, I can't say I ever felt a dramatic call or thought a pivotal, revelation of in that kind of way. But as I look back, I think, I was led to all these places, and I think, God was definitely there, and is through it all. And that's kind of a revelation too. Thank you.
Start with the 50s. Okay. She is a gift, has been volunteering at the Synod office now for a number of years, and as we were talking about who we wanted to invite to share their call stories, it seemed to me to make perfect sense to invite her. Her work in the Synod office has just been stellar. And when you offer to pay her, you get the look. And you might imagine what the look looks like, but it's clear that pay is not necessary. And truthfully, it has been a gift to you and to me as we've worked together. So let's lift up and honor some of our folks that have some pretty significant anniversaries. If the Reverend John Lundeen could please come forward. 50 years of ordination. And you're just getting your retirement papers too, is that the deal? Congratulations.
I want to try it again, see how it works.
Okay.
So, thank you for the honor.
You bet. My pleasure. Served in the military?
25 years.
Great to have you back in South Dakota.
You never hold a job, though. I had 12 places in 25 years.
That happens to some chaplains, they just can't keep them in one place. Thanks for coming back to South Dakota. And the Reverend Jim Olson. Also 50 years of service in the church, of ordained ministry. He is the man that taught me to appreciate constitutions. I'm not joking either. So, all right. Congratulations on your 50 years.
Thank you.
And then the Reverend Fred Rosine. Is Sally here too? You going to both come up? Or do you want me to come back to you? I'll come back to you. Fred is the first pastor that I met in the South Dakota Synod. Do you mind if I tell this story?
No,
I'm going to tell it anyway, so. Let's take the picture first. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
To you and to Sally both. So, it's the fall of 81. I'll take the next one. Fall of 81. And I've just been installed by Elroy Steinwand at Scandinavian Bethany Lutheran Church. The day before my installation, my brother had hit me in the head with a metal object, and I think I'd been sewn on by a veterinarian. And my mother kept telling me, no one will notice that the right side of my face is swollen. I mean, it looks like I've been in a bar fight. I kid you not. And I can't see out of my right eye, and that's my installation day. And I know the people down there were thinking, we got to get a different pastor. It's his first day on the job. Well, I've been getting calls from all these pastors in the Northern Plains, and they kept insisting that I attend this fall gathering because they did a fall retreat at Nisadak Bible Camp. And so after the fourth or fifth call, my wife, Lord Lover, said, you better go to that. And we had a brand new baby. It's our second child. And I go, we had one vehicle. She goes, you got to go. So, fine. So on the Sunday afternoon of my installation, I packed the car, drove from Scandinavia, because we lived in the country next to the church, and drove into Nisadak. And I'm trying to find a place to park where my car won't sink in the parking lot, and finally locate such a spot. And I go to get out, and this man in bib overalls with his very large grizzly beard appears with the largest butcher knife I've ever seen in my life. It was a little bit smaller than a machete. And he has a great big Dutch oven in his other hand, and he goes, I'm Pastor Rosine. Welcome to the Synod. Okay. And he says, I'm going to get some mushrooms. You want to go? Nope. No, that's okay. And all of that's true, isn't it, Fred? Huh? Yep. We've been fast friends forever since then. So, great anniversary for 50 years. If the Reverend Franklin Putis, M. Franklin Putis, would please come forward. And we're going to honor you for 60 years.
60 years, how about that?
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Goes fast.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
You betcha.
How about that?
And there's a...
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Back in the day, he was my family's pastor. He buried both of my grandparents out of First Lutheran Church in Mitchell, South Dakota. Norm Eitram was wise enough to hire him to be the precursor to Lutheran Plan Giving, before there was a Lutheran Plan Giving. And we were one of the first districts in the entire church to have a plan giver. And you can see the fruits of the work that Franklin began all those years ago. So congratulations on your 50 years. 60 years. 60 years. And then Kermit Rye. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We need to turn that way if you don't mind for the photo. Perfect. And thank you for your many years of service. It's been a delight to have you here in this synod, this district, back in the old days.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it. And our last honoree is Ralph John Troy for 65 years. Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Good to be here with you.
It is good to have you here with us. Absolutely. And you brought your girlfriend.
Yeah.
That's good. But
5 years too.
65 years as well.
That's right.
Congratulations.
Half the ministry.
Half the ministry. Today? Oh, so we have somebody else celebrating 60 years of marriage, and that would be the M. Franklin Pudices. Yes, congratulations. Who was tougher in this deal? They both pointed at each other. Congratulations. All right, how about if we give them all a round of applause? And now it's my privilege to invite the Reverend M. Franklin Pudice to share your call story.
I feel privileged to be able to come and speak about the call and what happens when you say yes. And when I look around and see the other retired pastors, if the bishop had called any one of them, knowing them, I think we would have had to charge admission to hear their stories. So it's nice to be a part of this synod and to be associated with all these people through all these years. All my 60 years in ministry have been in South Dakota. And we who are older pastors have a habit, and not a bad one, of being name droppers. And I brought my paper along so I don't miss the people I've been thinking about. For instance, Dr. Gerhard Frost, my first drop, was a neighbor, colleague, close friend of my wife's family in Decorah, Iowa, and also my professor in seminary. And one day in class, Dr. Frost said, and this is quoting loosely, he said, "Our first seminary classroom is in the kitchen at our mother's knee." That's always meant something very special to me because, unfortunately, my first seminary classroom was not in the kitchen because my mother died at age 31 when I was barely 3 years old. And it wasn't until much later in my ministry at Rossold that my Aunt Edna told me one day, she said, "You know, your mother always prayed that one of her boys would be a pastor." Now that, all of a sudden, that knowledge explained the significance of lots of different encounters all through my life that I really hadn't appreciated. And I'm not ashamed to say and credit the Holy Spirit with the leading through all those years. And the church is people like my parents, my wife, our children, friends, the people I have supper with at church on Wednesday nights, the myriads and tribes of nations, people I'll never meet, but the church is people. And so when you become a pastor, it isn't quite as scary as one would imagine, because these are the people who have asked you to represent them, to preach God's word, to help lead in the many different missions and ministries and keep order in the congregation, and of course to administer word and sacraments ministry. Now, I think a lot about these things that seemed inconsequential as I was growing up. And of course, the first thing that happened was my baptism. I don't remember it, but I do have a nice baptism certificate about this big at home. and it's written in Finnish. I had to ask my dad to translate so I would even know what my baptism date was. I didn't know Finnish. And it turns out that I was baptized by a pastor who had come over from Finland. Now that sounds pretty important now, doesn't it? The pastor came over from Finland at Sabika, Minnesota, on a farm, and it was on May 17, 1933. Sitnamai. Now, you say, why is that important? Well, because I think that has become my quasi-acceptance into the church and dealing with all these Norwegian people over the years. Well, in addition to the kitchen seminary, I know that my father-in-law, who was ordained, I think, in 1931, said that he was inspired as a boy by going into his pastor father's study and being surrounded by all those big books. And I think there are other families, generations of families, who may have had that same kind of inspiration by being brought up in a parsonage. For instance, when I was ordained in 1958, they came out with a pictorial directory of pastors, and I was smuggled in among the Norwegians, because here's how it went. Preuss, 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 Pudus. Now, when Dr. David Preuss, who was then president of the ELC, came to Mitchell to preach at our Reformation service in the Corn Palace, he said, "Oh, so you're Pudus." So we had been enthralled by each other's names for many years. Well, later when our Norwegian, German, and Danish churches merged and became the ALC, there were 17 pastors between Preuss and Pudus. Names like Preby, Probst, Preil, Prop. I could go through 17 names. It would be poetic. It sounds like poetry until I add Pudus. and then it's just comical. Thanks for laughing. So to be somewhat serious, what were the things that boosted me and encouraged me to go into the ministry? Not knowing at the time that my mother had prayed that one of her boys would do so. And so I'm going to list some names. These people, they would be amazed. They would be amazed to know that their names were called out at a Synod assembly in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because they might say, well, I'm amazed that you even remember me or remember some situation in your life that was meaningful. But I'm going to mention names. And as I do so, you're going to be remembering some people who have been an influence in your life. And maybe it would be good to think about how your own life is going to be memorable and maybe an influence in someone else's life as years go by. So here goes my list. It's been a long, long life, long 85 years, so it's going to be a long list here. Okay, these are the things, however. Now, think about it. Family worship and prayer. We didn't say, are we going to church today? No, family worship prayers. Sunday school teachers, Pastor Rue from Duluth and missionaries Anderson from China and Klippen from Alaska at Bible camp. Confirmation pastors Olaf Rossing and Ray Reinholson Sr. National Luther League conventions, Scout leaders Fred Thompson and Albert Mermel, Sunday school superintendent Mrs. Sather, who said I would be a good pastor before I even thought of being a pastor. A tract that was placed conveniently next to the phone at home, which read, "Have you considered the ministry?" Dr. J.N. Brown, president of Concordia College at the time, who sent a personal letter inviting me to Concordia after he attended a Luther League meeting in Cloquet where I was president that night. And most interesting, and we like to drop names, right? Okay. Most interesting, Paul J. Christiansen, Concordia Choir Director, who invited me to ride home with him back to Moorhead from a concert in Park Rapids, Minnesota, during which time he was trying to convince me that I should stay with music. He saw something that probably was interesting to him, but later on, as the evening went on and we visited, he did give me his blessing for the ministry. And so I've dropped a lot of names. One I've left out that shouldn't be left out, and that's my wife, Marit. She knows the long hours. She knows some of those sleepless nights. But she also laughs at my jokes. And she shares my commitment to the pastoral ministry. And she kept the rule. Don't talk about the sermon until Tuesday. Unless it was good. And she helped me over these 60 plus years to see more clearly how beautiful life can be. Now, one more name to drop, and this will surprise you. One more name, way at the end of the list. That's Garrison Keeler. Lately of Prairie Home Companion, who would often include references to the church and make his own theological comments, once saying, "The greatest sin of pastors is to be boring." Over the years, I have sinned boldly. And that's why it's so wonderful to be in the church where we are forgiven and where it's good for us and healthy for us to forgive others. And so my call, just think, it all began with a mother's prayer over 80 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last call story, it will be from Pastor Karin Soli, and the Reverend Dr. Karin Soli. And first we're going to see a video, and then she'll have a few comments at the very end.
I'm Karin Soli.
You know that minute.
I'm Karin Soli, and I was born in Granite Falls, Minnesota, born and raised, and that was the town in which my grandmother and great-grandparents also lived. I have been hearing and living in the shadow of the gospel of Jesus Christ for all my life. I have here a little darling little picture of me on the day I was baptized. I'd never seen a woman be a pastor. It had never crossed my mind. So what I declared at that moment in 9th grade really was that I wanted to be involved in full-time church work, and that's what I'd seen women do. And there was a circuitous path. I went to a Lutheran school, St. Olaf, and thought maybe I wanted to be an English teacher. And along the way, had different experiences, faith experiences, and with the congregation at St. Olaf and also some other groups, where I realized I really needed to stay with that. And I don't know at that time that I would have used the word call, and I actually think everybody is called to what God is having them do with their lives. Everybody. It takes different shapes, but that the journey of seeing myself as pastor, the Lutheran churches in this country had been ordaining women at that time for 5 years. I really didn't think women should be ordained. When I first heard my friend say she wanted to go to seminary in 1970 and become a pastor, that was even before the decision was made in 70. And I thought, no. I didn't say it, but I thought, what if you got pregnant? You know, what would you do then? I had the communion patent right on my stomach is what I did and served. I had the privilege of learning from Robert Jensen, who just passed away, one of our great American Lutheran theologians. And my opening theology course was from him. And I still remember him standing in the middle of that classroom. He didn't stand up front, he walked around. You know how they do. Saying, pay attention now, you are going to be guardians of the gospel. That's what your job is. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to try to do. I guess early on when people weren't used to a woman pastor, it was more distracting. You know, riding in an elevator at a hospital and somebody says, I've never met one before. Or similar kinds of things. We'll just leave it at that. Sometimes kind of vicious, some kind anonymous postcards. I only had one person reject receiving communion from me. That's not easy, and certainly things in certain parishes where they just weren't ready to have a woman in leadership. Those were tough, but the good far outweighed the bad. And something I never imagined I'd do came after that. I ran for office, and I got elected. So I've ran and served. I'm a citizen legislator, that's what we call this, and there are 70 representatives from all over the state that come. There are 2 from this area, and I so have served these 3 terms, 6 years, finishing that out. But I see doing that kind of service. I wasn't sure at first how that would work, but I feel like what I bring largely is a different way of seeing and doing things, because I respect everybody, and I don't start something from the position of being against something or somebody. I start from the position of seeing how, understanding and solving problems. How should the church raise new leaders? Well, make sure you're preaching and teaching the good news of God's love and grace. I think that's what churches need to do. And make sure their youth programs and young people, but it's at all ages, but especially in those formative years, are really the kind of thing that's not just entertaining kids, but making a difference, being a haven for them.